Yeah, yeah, that's not on the agenda.
I got it, you know, like at, what, 1 o'clock?
For us, we could have a top.
You know, it's like a lot to digest. So, Frank, those are your federal taxes. Do your employees have to pay them?
I have to leave by 3:20.
Okay, so the town always has to watch.
So not all day. So not all day.
You want me to be quiet? Okay, I get the hang of it.
We'll try to,
Hey, you gotta leave before I do.
we'll try to keep it focused. Candace, you all set? You put it aside.
Okay,
I had
and-
a match.
okay. So,
Candace?
so how's it work that the town
Nope, we haven't started yet. I just want to make sure you're ready.
employees pay?
I'd like to call the special meeting for the Board of Selectmen to order. Call to order. Thank you.
Jonathan Moore.
Candy Perez?
Josh Kelly.
Todd Archelashi.
Lon Albanesius.
Stephen Sudlar.
Linda Grappo?
Jack Bork.
Item 2, consider and possibly act on the fiscal year '24 budget. We have some required alterations to make first.
So would you like me to go through?
Yeah,
both
if
of
you
them?
could go through.
So there are two handouts that the Board of Selectmen's been given tonight. There's one that's stapled as a packet. There's another one that's a single sheet. I'll go over the single sheet first. The Board of Selectmen has asked me up to this point in time to go through and create a set of recommendations on what items could, perhaps should be cut in order to get the budget down to the point where with the new revaluated grand list that we have, get us down to a 26.50 mill rate. So the totals that you see in front of you today are on this first sheet, the single sheet, titled Recommended Cuts to Get to 26.50 mils, are the items that I have put together in an attempt to get there. I think that there's a lot of room for discussion. These are very large policy questions that the Board of Selectmen needs to answer, and this is presented to you today for further discussion purposes. The other sheet that you have in front of you, this is a detailed list of what changes to specific line items would need to be made in order to first make and implement the 21 reductions that I had proposed in the previous sheet that I had just discussed with you. Towards the end of that, so you can see over on the left-hand side, there are a number of recommendation numbers. If you see a recommendation number on this sheet, it corresponds to the initial sheet that I gave you. So, for example, town support for education, Board of Education, electricity, $100,000 reduction on the first handout that I gave you equates to the same item, number 1, education indirect costs in Department 912, town support for education, $100,000 reduction. So these two sheets should go hand in hand, and you should be able to cross-reference between them. You can see that there are many items that may move for a single reduction. For example, with number 2 on the first sheet, we have greater town electricity reductions. We know that we can save $11,702 on the town electricity lines. However, those are split between several different departments. So you'll see on the second sheet that there are a series of actual reductions that need to be made in different parts of the budget in order to achieve that level of savings. And those line numbers are there, the line names, the department names, et cetera, so that you have an idea of exactly which lines will be changing in the budget in order to achieve that reduction. Towards the bottom of the second handout, or I should say on page 2 and 3 of the second handout, as you flip it over, it's the stapled handout, you'll see the numbers go from 20 to adjustment 1. Adjustment 1 is not a reduction, it is, again, an adjustment. So that's actually an increase that we need to make in one particular line, or that I'm recommending that we make in one particular line to fund everything going forward. And make sure that all of our lines are at the appropriate level. For example, we have a transfer. I'm going to on the bottom of page 2, point you to adjustments 2.1 and 2.2. That's land use and tax collector departments. We have a transfer that is occurring right now between personnel in our land use office and our tax collector's office. This is a net neutral transfer. You'll see that it requires a $15,133 reduction in one department and the same number added to a different department. That is going to allow that transfer to occur because the individual who's transferring into our tax department has a higher salary rate that will transfer over per their union contract, and a new person being hired in the land use office will start at the lower rate. So again, those adjustments on pages 2 and 3 are either net neutral changes or increases to the budget, all of which are offset by the cuts that are numbers 1 through 21. And
When does that land use, that change take place?
that will take place in the next month, I expect. It depends on when we're able to hire a new individual into that position, the admin assistant position.
So there'll be some changes in our current budget for that too, then?
It's possible. We've seen some savings in the tax collector, the assistant tax collector line, because there was a period of time earlier this year where that position went unfilled. And there's a period right now where that position is unfilled. There is one typo that I did just catch on the second page of the second handout. You'll see that number 20 says fire, which is Department 211. Immediately below that, it says number 20 revenues. That is actually not number 20. That's number 21. I apologize for that typo. So if you're trying to, correlate these two sheets together, number 20 should have fire next to it. Number 21 should say revenues next to it. And everything else goes down from there. So these are the recommended changes that are needed. No action needs to be taken today on any of this, but I present it to you for further discussion. I'm happy to go through line by line and explain why some of these items are worthy of being cut and perhaps should be cut, and there are other lines where it was really hard for me to come up with this list. There are lines here I do not believe should be cut in an effort to get us down to a 26.50 mill rate. I find that we have few other choices that wouldn't result in greater damage to the town's ability to operate. But I'll take any questions and turn it back over to you, Mr. Mayor, for further discussion.
Discussion? Jack, go
Yeah, I
ahead.
have just a question for you, Josh, on just a couple of these pages. Let's go to the one-sheet handout.
Yep.
What's not included in there is something we discussed before, and that was the Northwestern Connecticut Transit. We looked at taking some money from that particular bill and doing some negotiating with that. I don't see anything in there. Is there a decision made on that?
So I had sent a letter to I'll pull it up right now. I sent a letter to the interim executive director of the Northwest Transit District. I asked if he would provide us with ridership numbers for the Winstead routes. I asked if he would provide us with information about whether we could increase the level of spending over a period of time, so it's not a giant jump from $4,000 up to over $50,000 in a single year. I asked what would happen at the transit district level if the Winchester Board of Selectmen didn't include the full requested amount in their budget going forward. And I also asked if that individual, the interim executive director, would be interested in sitting down with the Board of Selectmen to discuss the effectiveness of the routes that
When
visit
did you
Winstead.
send that letter?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to send it until later this week, but however, I have not heard back at this point in time. We may hear something by Monday or Tuesday. I will impress upon him the importance of getting back to us, but at this time I don't have information about what the bottom line impact would be if we cut in that area. My recommendation to you would be, given that we don't know, would be to budget for it with an understanding that we can still sit down with him and negotiate what the routes look like. But as a worst case scenario, I think that the Board of Selectmen would, or at least I would like to see the different lines that we have maintained to the greatest extent possible until we know how to improve them.
Fair enough. The other question I have is page 1, the total is 907, page 3 on the other one, 870. Just try to balance that different number, the 907 total on the single handout
Yep.
and the 870, just kind of verify that for me, please?
Absolutely. So the difference between those two numbers is the difference in the adjustments. So
I thought so,
the,
but just
right,
wanted to
the town manager's revised budget, which we discussed, and you made a series of motions and recommendations at your last meeting. You made a motion to make changes to the budget. But those budget numbers required an $870,000 reduction in order to get to a 26.5 mill rate. However, when you add the other adjustments, which are adjustments 1 through adjustment 5 on the second page that I gave you, there are some slight increases in those numbers, as you can see, and we can go through those individually, that require a $907,234 reduction in total to get us to the 26.50 mill rate when you take those adjustments into account. So it's an $870,000 reduction in the total tax levy that from the town manager's revised budget that was voted on at the last meeting. But in total, with all of the adjustments that are being made, we had to find $907,000 and change to be reduced from the budget in order to keep it at the mill rate that was requested.
I have one more clarifying number that I'd like to see just before we begin further discussion here. Just a clarifying number. Do you have, from the Board of Assessment Appeals, a total grand list that we now have?
I do. And I know that number. I can tell you that the bottom line Board of Assessment Appeal assessed value reduction is $11 million.
I saw that on this note on the single handout. I was just looking for what the total is right now, the GL,
Oh, the total grand list, understood.
based upon the Board of Assessment Appeals deductions or reductions.
So the total grand list is $1,031,648,147.
You want to repeat those numbers again, please?
$1,031,648,147. That's with the revaluated numbers, no other adjustments, just taking Board of Assessment Appeals and the revaluated numbers into account.
You got all that. I do.
Other discussion? One of the things that, seeing no one else, I'll make some comments here. We've been focused on the 26.5 mil. That's our target goal. I think we need to pump the brakes on that number and first decide if we're going to accept the reevaluation 100% or if we're going to phase it in over a couple of years, 2 years, 3 years. Because if we were to do that, the mill rate number would not be 26.5. Because that's on 100% of the new revaluation. So at some point, we're going to need to make a decision on, do we phase it in or do we accept it 100% now? Because it is a big chunk for several areas of town.
Right, and I was gonna bring this up at the end of our meeting, but I'll pass it out now. As you know, I've been working on the reval and people on this for quite a while now. So this is, when we talk about a phase-in of revaluation, a consideration of it, we have to like get our arms around what that looks like, right? So there are towns that are doing it, that are phasing in. There are towns that postpone their reevaluation, et cetera. So one of the factors I think that we look at in working with other people on this is factors that would make us consider it. It was done during a COVID spike. It was changed when we changed reval companies from the ones we traditionally use for the past, I don't know, 18, 19 years. We had a series of resignations in the assessor's office, which left us with an office that had people there for way less time than usual and not had the usual interaction with the reval company. The reval itself was late in completion. The informal meetings were not held as originally contracted because they were later and some people did not get an in-person but had like a Zoom. That's just a few things I put down. The OPM, West Hartford, Naugatuck, Stamford are phasing, so OPM is well aware of it and does allow for that. Benefits of it would be fair value. Well, I mean, it all depends on, of course, where you look from. Fair value to everyone, smooths out spikes in both directions, the highs and the lows. It allows for, when I think about the budget, and one of the troubles we're having with the budget is on top of just getting more money in the budget, we also have these huge spikes for people in the shift and the value. So it would allow for better sustainable budgeting over time, and allows for people to have appeals in the next appeal session next January. So they may be able to look at what may or may not be correct. So what it looks like is a phase-in. It's the phase-in of the appraised residential value. So like if a house went from $500,000 to $1 million, you could phase it in 2 years with the current value is $500,000, next year's value is $750,000, and the following year is $1 million. And that would be that each year it's still taxed at 70% of the appraised value, so your assessment is still 70%. On the other end, it could be a house, and there's some of these that went from $50,000 to $100,000. So this year they're assessed at 50, next year they'd be assessed at 75,000, and the year after at 100,000, and that would be taxed on 70% of the value as has been done. This applies to the residential values of houses in the revaluation. Cars and personal properties, their values would not change, but they would be affected by any shift or change in the mill rate. So, so if we're gonna consider it, I thought we should start talking about, you know, what that kind of starts to look like. I think the budget numbers are kind of, they go with it in the sense of impact, but they're also separate.
Agreed. And I think the other thing that would cause confusion, so that's why I kind of wanted to bring this up first, is we've been talking about a 26.5 mill rate, 26.5. It won't be 26.5 if we phase it in. It would be a little higher, a bit higher, but it would be lower than what we had last year. Jack, do you have something?
Just come back, Candy, on your examples there. We're talking about residential. How about commercial on that too?
No. Well, commercial, the appraised real estate values, I should write.
So it's all real estate values?
real estate.
Whether it's a
Yeah.
home or commercial
Yeah.
real estate
Yeah.
or industrial real
Yeah,
estate?
you're right, I'm sorry, I should have wrote that down.
Okay. So it's just not residential
No.
that you're talking about
Right.
phasing in,
Right, it's all real estate, not personal property, which are businesses and
and
cars.
not car.
Yeah.
Again, you said that mill rate, if we had the phase-in, it will be higher than 26.5?
Yes.
Closer to 33, what we were paying?
It would be lower than that, but it wouldn't be
Lower,
26.5.
like, lower, how much lower? Like, we were talking 27 before.
Estimated,
I'm actually trying to calculate that right
Okay.
now. If you give me
Okay.
30 seconds, I'll have a
Well,
number.
before we calculate it, because that's gonna
That's
throw
right.
some false.
To waste your time yet there,
And
Charlie.
I think it's gonna.
We may have some discussion here on this.
Well, I think if we're gonna do this, then we should bring the expert in that has talked about doing this, so that everybody gets a full understanding of what's gonna happen with it. Because yes, the mill rate will be in a different spot than it is now, but most people that are still getting a reduction would get a reduction. People that were getting a high spike would still get an increase. It just takes off the really high spike and the really low decrease, and kind of brings it more back, like a regular, well, it won't be regular, there's nothing regular about this reval. It'll be like if, right now, if we didn't have a reval this year, we'd be looking at a 2.3 mil increase in anything we deduct from it here. So people at home would have their usual value, and the mill rate would be 33.45 plus 2, or plus 1, or even, or wherever it was. But when you shift the $1,310,000,000 grand list, instead of taking, it wouldn't be 1,310,000,000, it'd be like maybe 1 billion, and then you apply that mill rate, yes, it would go up. But it still is less than the 33.45. And it depends if you do a 2-year phase-in or a 3-year phase-in. So it's complicated, but the concept, you know, is, I think everybody gets that. It's just more complicated on the other end. And it's complicated because, you know, I brought this up way back when, you know, we've been talking about it here and there, but it's also harder now because it's crunch time.
All right, let's say we phase it in. My particular piece of property is going up first year of this amount. I could still come back the next year and ask for reevaluation by the Board of Assessment Appeals. So it does not matter that you lock it in for a 3-year evaluation, because every year I could come into the BAA and get an appeal again, correct?
Yeah, you can go anytime.
Only if you didn't get an appeal a previous year.
But I can appeal every year.
If it's granted, no.
Yeah,
It's
understand.
it's stuck for 5 years. So you wouldn't be able to appeal again until the next reevaluation if you were granted a reduction by the BAA.
Even if we're phasing it in?
That's probably something you would need to look at with Kevin.
Yeah, that's the one real question that I have. I'm not sure how the adjusted values are implemented in the
Right.
event of a phase-in. I expect that they would also be phased in, but I can't confirm.
That's why I would say if we're gonna talk about it and seriously consider it, then we should bring the expert in.
Well, the expert would be our assessor. I mean, that's who we pay to be the expert in our town assessments.
Well, I
Right.
think there's other people that would be helpful as well.
Well, I'd like to hear from our own assessor on this,
Well,
too.
that's fine, maybe we could have a panel of people if we're gonna do it.
Any further discussion on this? All right, let's move on to the reductions thoughts on the reductions.
Josh, can I assume there's been discussion with the superintendent about these adjustments?
There's been conversation. I will tell you that it's going to be a burden for the schools. They put together a very robust budget. They put together something that's going to fund the school system from their perspective adequately, and any reduction to that is going to harm that level of operation. But that being said, the conversation has been had. Melanie actually has the full list of reductions that you have in hand right now. The $100,000 that we have in reductions for town support for education, just so you all know, we have secured the same lock-in rate for the schools and the Water and Sewer Commission as we have for the town, which is we've more than halved the supply rate. Now, there are still delivery rates to be considered with electricity. Our grants analyst, Tom Herschel, went through, or our budget analyst, Tom Herschel, went through and calculated out that if we increase that for a variety of reasons, increase the estimated number, because we have the new air conditioning system that's going in at Pearson School that may drive up costs related to electricity. And we have a few unknowns related to the Hinsdale School. We don't want to cut down and be right at that 10.8 kilowatt hour number that we had before. So there is a buffer in there for safety purposes, and we are confident. That's why this number is a little lower of a smaller cut than I originally suggested may be possible. But we want to make sure that they're going to be okay and that they're going to be comfortable with this reduction. So that's the $100,000 that you see there. That should not impact their operations, because that should be a real savings that they are realizing through this procurement process that we went through. The $200,000 that would be given to them from fund balance, the idea of this is to have it go towards capital improvements. However, it shouldn't have a net impact on their ability to, one way or the other, regardless of what line it's put into. It's still $200,000 that's going to them that will help to fund projects as they see fit. And the $200,000, so really it's a $200,000 bottom line reduction to their ability to operate. That hurts certainly on the town side. Our reductions hurt as well. And I'm sure that Melanie would be happy to share other thoughts about specifics at some point. I can't speak that educated, in an educated manner on where her reductions are going to come from.
Other discussion?
On page 1, that one line that you just were talking about, you said the new total amount in this line, 797, 272, is the exact same as you gave us in the requested amount, right? I'm just looking at the numbers compared to the budget draft that you gave us originally, where
Yeah.
we had the total support for education at 797, 272.
My apologies, I'm looking right now. It's a very large budget document that I've just gone through.
I had the same problem, but that you printed it out. I'm okay with that. This is on page 1 of the 3-page document. It's line 1.
Yeah,
Sorry, I have it
he's
here.
looking in
I'm
the
looking at
budget.
the full, budget line here. So town support for education, that's a mistake. So it should read 697,
Read that back, please.
272. 697,272 is the new total amount in that line. With a $100,000 reduction.
So that would
They've been assorting.
Would that influence that bottom line on page 3?
No, it will not impact the bottom line. The bottom line is a number, a fixed number that I had written in. It is not a formula. It doesn't impact that number at all.
Todd, we've all talked about this, and we've looked at different things. I'm just wondering, in your view of things, how you would support this. Where do we go with something like this?
The reductions?
Yeah, with the reductions that have been recommended, what do you feel about?
So I am in favor of most of them. Some of them I do take exception to. A couple of these are staff eliminations, and I believe that at the end of the day, that's not in our best interests. One of the issues we've had over the last couple of years is the staff that's left. Seems like we hire people, we get them certified, and then we don't pay them enough, so they look for jobs elsewhere.
In all departments.
In all departments. So any cutting of staff that's currently employed, I don't think is in our best interest as a town. I would be okay probably with not filling some open positions, but eliminating staff, I am not in favor of.
Give me an example.
Let me see.
Line 17?
Number 17.
Line 17, a reduction of the assistant part-time town clerk position. That's a position that's hired. We have that position in the building. I would not be in favor of eliminating it. We went through the process of trying to build up the staff in the town clerk's office because of, the change from Sheila to Glenn. I'm not in favor of, and this was a position that Sheila, I believe, we talked a couple weeks ago, Sheila was in favor of and worked very hard to get this approved, so I don't think it's in our best interest to eliminate it.
How about line 15?
Maybe before you leave that,
Yep.
I'd just like to have a little discussion about this and possessions in general. There's been a document circulating that I haven't been able to see that talked about this position and some salaries. I haven't seen it. I think most of you have, but I have not. So I'm curious about that document, and I'm curious about, I'd asked Josh, after I heard about the document, I asked him to tell me what all the raises of non-union people were. Because while we're looking at this and some other positions, as you just brought up, I'd like to know what the overall, what it is, so to make sure that we have a good look across the board at things. And again, I'm just gonna remind people that these taxes are falling on top of people's homes. And there are people at this table that have experienced that in the past. And when the budgets go and create increases, and now that it's coupled, so any decision we're making here is difficult. We all like to see a lot of things. But it's gonna be very difficult, because all of this to be funded needs funding from people in their homes. It's not getting funded anywhere else this year. So can anybody enlighten me on the positions of that were identified or anything? Anybody got any information for me? Not you? Anybody on the board?
Yeah, I have a copy of the document. I was asked my position on part-time assistant town clerk.
Yep.
And the salary of the town clerk. And I responded.
Great.
And let me just say on a personal note, you know, I hate to do this because I'm still married to the town clerk, by the way, but she's no longer the town clerk. She fought for like 6 years trying to get this position into the office. And it's there, and to my knowledge, it's necessary, and I would support keeping the part-time town clerk position in place. As far as the salaries for non-union people, we've had discussion at this table about how we don't compete. And we lose people all the time from our road department, from our police department, from some of the administrative departments. And I think this board needs to take a long-term look at how we can be more competitive, so we don't just hire people and lose them 6 months or a year later. We're a town on the way up, and I think we've got to bite the bullet at this point and make some of these things work, even though, as you say, Candy, it's hard to find the revenue for all of this. We're gonna have to make other kind of cuts if we keep the personnel in. I'm willing to take a look at that, and I'm also willing to participate in any kind of a subcommittee which takes a look at this and gives us not only what the problem is, the nature of the problem, and some recommendations about how we could phase things in over time to be more competitive. I'd be part of such a body that looks at that.
And we had talked about doing that after all the dust settled from the budget year.
Yeah.
Steve, to your point, and I want to repeat this because I think it's valuable in what you're saying. Salary is one area certainly where we need to look at why do people go to other towns? But they also go for other reasons. They go for the culture or the working atmosphere or even the conditions in which they're working in. One of the things I heard about why we lost a couple, or potentially was part of the reasons, we lost some people down at the town garage was the working conditions. You know, having lunch in a lunchroom where they were competing with some rats that were running around. And that's a condition that we're going to increase, that we're going to improve upon with the new development. But it's not always salary. It often has to do with the atmosphere around where they work. I'm hoping I'm not stepping out of line here with Mel in the background, is that she has been able to keep staff because it's a great working environment. And I don't know how many teachers you turn over, but it seems to be that it's been not as high turnover as it was 5-7 years ago before she was here. So to your point about a committee, I would certainly want to have some participation in that committee, but I think it should not just be focused on salary. It needs to be focused on what's the working atmosphere, what's the conditions around each department head and each department, how it runs. That's something that is as important in recruiting and keeping people as an extra $1 an hour in the salary. Just something to consider in the total environment of being able to keep people.
all of the things you mentioned should be considered, but that makes the job 10 times bigger than if you have a narrower focus. But I wouldn't be opposed to that, it's just gonna take longer to do.
So for today, may I offer a suggestion? Just because, time's gonna run out and we have to move things. We have Monday night and probably another meeting next week if we have to decide things. I think we still need the information, because in the transit district, I would wanna cut that money. I don't think that we give them all that money without answers, and I wouldn't leave it there waiting for answers. If they wanna give us answers, they should give us the justification of why to include it, not to leave it sit there because it does affect mill rate. So if I look at this list, I'm assuming, and one should never do that, right? But I'm just gonna go down through and things that I think we would all agree on.
What page are you working on?
I'm doing the single little sheet.
The single sheet?
Yep. And then we can make motions after I go through this. I'm sorry, I was, so I think number one, we can agree to because it doesn't affect anything but the electricity costs. Number two, I think we can agree to. 3, we can agree to. 4, we can agree to. 5, I think we can agree to because the money's gonna be there, it's just in a different place, it's not any reduction. I think we could agree to number 6 as being out of our area. Number 7, the town hall vehicle, because we just got 2 of them. I think we can agree to number 8. I think we can agree to number 9. Number 10, I guess, we could do that. We could do 11. We could do 12 and move it over to the ARPA to get it off of the mill rate. Because that was put in during ARPA when we wanted to make sure that things got pushed through ARPA when we did not have a planner. So going back over to ARPA and not staying in a budget that lasts until the following year. 13, because I think there is ways to have funding for that. That's not through a mill rate. Leave 14 alone for now. 15 we'll leave alone for now. 16 I think we can agree to. Leave 17 alone for right now. 18 I think we can agree to. 19 I think we can agree to. And one thing I want in the record is that the social worker is a part-time position with regards to our own taxes. It is funded by grants, and this helps fund it by more grants, but when it comes back next year, if there is no grant funding, it should come back as a part-time position, which it was sustainably intended to do. Leave 20 for right now, and 21, I think we can agree on that.
Candy, if I may, number 10, you had seemed hesitant about that. It is a relatively small number. The amount that we give them in opioid funds could be increased if you wanted to see that additional $1,000 there
Right.
as part of the health budget. So we can keep the taxpayer burden the same and increase our spending in that area if you so choose.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, just because I know with the opioid issues we have in town, I think that would be good. So if that was a shift out of that, I mean, it's a relatively small amount, but out of when we got those numbers from you, the grants, there was money in the opioid. So I would say that if the board wants to entertain all those things that I checked off, then we can move those out of the way, and then we could get to the things that maybe require a little bit more conversation, just for process.
How did you leave 13? What was your comment there?
13, I've been talking to Josh about this. If you remember last year, the state of Connecticut gave $60,000 to us for programming, and they used 30,000 of it for something, because we had already paid for it as our town, and we got the $60,000 grant. 30,000 was used for something they brought to us. Remember, we signed that thing and we talked about how much was left. So there's money left in that grant. There's money coming again this year, and there's also, he was looking into the fees of, that the town gets from all these activities that they do. So I thought that we should, that it can be funded for something that's not in the mill rate, but in grant dollars.
Well, when you talk about the part-time director, assistant director of recreation, and what you're suggesting here is that this be reduced, but that the funding come from other sources.
Yes.
Okay. And those other sources, for instance, I saw the advertisement for pickleball trainer or teacher. $175
Yep,
for 4 nights.
yep.
And if you times that by maybe 4 or 5 people sign up, maybe 6, that person's getting paid that.
Correct.
And is that person then paying for the use of our public tennis courts to have these private lessons on?
My understanding for this particular program is that there's a 15% fee. So every dollar that comes in, 15% of it comes off the top to the town.
Pretty small when the cost for me as an individual is $175.
Understood.
And the tennis court is being used by this particular person teaching. It just doesn't make sense to me, those kinds of dollars, because again, I don't know how many people you take at one time, but I've seen instructions go up with, let's say, 6 people. So 6 people paying $175 for 4 nights, 2 hours. Pretty expensive stuff. And if we're not getting a better return than 15%, something's wrong, because you're using town facilities for private, for private profit.
And I completely agree that that 15% could and perhaps should be looked at. But I also agree with Candy's point that there is enough, as it stands with the grant that we received last year, the grant that we are certainly putting in for this year, in the recreation budget to fund this relatively small cost for an assistant in the recreation office to help make things operate. I believe that the recreation fund can support that expenditure.
Because what we're trying to do is, or what I'm thinking we're trying to do, is if we're taking the money from the grants right now, it allows all the business development to take place, because to grow the grand list, you know, because we didn't have a lot of business growth this past year. So if we get business growth, and that'll be a thing that we ask for going forward into the future, is what does our business growth snapshot look like right now? But if we get business growth, then these positions can come back and get funded by tax dollars. But right now, the idea, my goal is to get it off the mill rate, get the funded from revenue sources we clearly already have in grants. I mean, the revenue source will be drained out through a grant, just like ARPA would be drained, the revenue source will be drained. So there won't be anywhere to go maybe next year or the year after, but if we can do it this year when we have an extraordinary issue in front of us, that we could do that. And so that other issue, Jack, yes, that's one of the things we've been talking about with that. So does anybody have any objections to my list? Because if not, then I'm gonna start making motions.
Well, how did you leave item 14? Did you say we all agree on that?
No,
Board of Education?
no, I said leave it.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I would like to hear from the superintendent of schools about the impact of $200,000 cut before we take further action.
But it's not a $400,000 cut.
200,000.
Yeah, I thought you said 4.
Nope, 2.
Okay, yeah, no.
Well, it's not even a cut.
Just to clarify for
Transfer.
everybody on what action wouldn't be taken with what Candy went through. We would not be taking action on number 10, which is a $1,000 cut to the health budget. We would not be taking action on number 14, which is a $200,000 cut to the Board of Education budget. We would not be taking action on number 15, which is a $94,854 cut to multiple departments related to a newly proposed full-time Parks and Recreation maintainer position. We would not take action on number 17, the part-time assistant town clerk, in the amount of $18,512. Is there anything else I missed? Or everything else is moving forward?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I thought
No,
I
I-
was following with you.
You really don't want to take action on number 10, $1,000 health?
No, I want to move it down to the opioid grant, down at the bottom.
So what I'll bring you next time is a proposal to increase the opioid grant money revenue line by $1,000 so that we can fund the expenditure on the flip side without it being taxpayer-based, if that makes sense. So it's an increase, a $1,000 increase in revenue instead of a $1,000 decrease in expenditure,
So number 10 would move to 21.
basically, yeah.
all right, Kenny, you want to go ahead and start?
Yeah, I
going
do
down the
want to
list?
start so that we can move this dime. Okay, I'm going to make a motion for educational indirect costs, Department 912, town support for education, I'll leave the line numbers out, but it is Department, like I said, 912, a reduction of $100,000.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Linda.
This is just the electricity savings.
All in favor?
Again, can I get clarification on that figure? If we do drop that figure by that amount,
Yeah.
then we are back to the total amount on the education indirect cost, town support for education is $697,000.
And change, yeah.
272.
Yes.
And that is an increase of, I don't know, I can't, we had the different, last year it was 510,000. Let's see if I got that number right. 601, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Wrong
that's
line,
right.
reading the wrong line. Am I correct on that?
Yep. Yes, you're correct.
Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay. The next one, I'm gonna make a motion, I'm gonna do multiple departments in this one. I'm gonna make a motion that we decrease, again, because of electricity savings, decrease Town Hall Building, Department 127 by $1.
That's correct.
Soldiers Monument, Department 129, reduction of $270. Fire Department 211, $2,776. Emergency Management Department 214 by $429. The Highway Department, Department 311 by $2,532. Cemeteries Department 313 by $51. Street Lighting Department 320 by $2,383. Recreation Department 812 by $2,312. And Senior Citizens Department 813 by $948.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay. I make a motion to reduce police line 210, administrative salaries, by $6,250.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Further discussion?
What will that affect, Josh?
So, when we were calculating, somebody read the wrong number in the new police chief's contract. So the number that was originally put into the budget is not what he will actually receive through the full year. That's what he will receive in the following fiscal year. So this savings that you're seeing here there's no impact because he wouldn't be paid that amount of money. It would be left over in the budget after this year. So you're cutting it down to the real operating expense.
It was a calculation error.
It was yes, correct.
All in favor? Unanimous?
I make a motion for Highways Department 311, salt, to reduce it by $25,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Steve. Discussion?
Reminder, there's a lot of salt left over from this year in that nice salt shed that we got them a few years ago.
And Josh, should we have a different type of winter, we can come back, or Public Works can come back and order more salt beyond its budget.
Oh, yes, certainly if the department needs it, they will be able to return to us. But they have a lot left over. They will be replenishing the amount that's in the shed before the end of this fiscal year to make sure that the shed is full. And then they will still have $180,000 to purchase more salt in the event that it's needed in the coming fiscal year.
And Jim is comfortable with the way the material is handling on this?
He's the one who offered up the $25,000 reduction here, but he made it clear that absolutely no more could be cut without him being comfortable, or with him still being comfortable.
They've done that in years past when they did.
Yeah, I know. I just want to make sure he's comfortable with it.
Yep.
All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay. All right, the next one, just a little explanation ahead of time. Again, this is taking money from fund balance to help with a capital repair. Capital repairs are supposed to be one-time items. They're not supposed to be something that is part of an operating cost, so we know that there's at least $200,000 in roof repair at the Gilbert School as part of their tuition request. Of course, it's the Board of Education that will deal with how the money is distributed and what they do with it. But this will allow for us to have a mill rate reduction and also supply the money that was requested. So I'm going to make a motion to increase, or to take
That's an
and add
increase.
to revenues,
It's an increase.
add to the revenues of fund balance $200,000.
That's an increase.
An increase, yes. There was a second over here behind me.
Candace has got a second. Got that. Further discussion?
And again, we understand that as we make these suggestions, the Board of Education and Gilbert School could do whatever they want with the money. They don't necessarily have.
That's what I just said, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure everybody's clear on, we have no, we can make the direction suggestion. but
I'm very
it
clear.
doesn't go.
All right. All in favor?
So now,
Unanimous.
I'm going to make a motion to reduce Board of Education expenditures, Department 1,000, line 1,000-100-100-000 by $200,000.
Second.
Thank you, Candace. Discussion?
Yeah, I'm gonna oppose that. You know, we're fond of saying the town is moving ahead. I believe that it is. One of the chief reasons that it's moving ahead is that the education department, which only a few years ago was in tough shape and under receivership for the state, has buoyed the town. My understanding is people want to move here, that they want, we heard this from Senator Murphy. People want to move here because they want their kids in this school system. The second thing is, there seems to be a renewed relationship between the Board of Education and the Gilbert School to do things together, to help each other. And I think they've really helped the town turn around. Melanie told us that big money, big numbers were coming because of all of the things that happened with grants, and so we knew this was in the works, and I think we need to support the education department, and I'll oppose the motion.
But you were in favor of the motion before that. The motion before that was to put $200,000 from a different fund into the school. So
Yeah.
this is a wash, 200 from the fund over to 200,000 back over to support the roof.
Yeah, Steve, lines 5 and 6 are almost washing each other off, because it's 200,000 from one way of looking at the budget and then putting it into a capital budget that can be used for the same thing. Again, the question is, will they use it that way? We're hoping it is, that's why it's set up that way, but it's the same amount of money. We're not actually reducing.
So there's no reduction in the education budget?
Not yet, because we haven't acted on line, the other line I left alone.
Right.
There's that
14.
other 14. I haven't touched 14, I'm not gonna touch 14 tonight. This is just swapping money from property tax, new property taxes, to property taxes that had already been collected and are sitting in our fund balance savings account.
What line are we talking about, Candy?
We're
5.
talking about line 5.
But we just voted on that a minute ago.
But
There's
there's
3
two-
separate parts of it.
There's two parts to line
We have to
5.
increase revenues and then decrease expenditures in the MBR line, and then increase expenditures in a new line transferring out to the Board of
You're
Education.
modifying the ledger, basically.
Yes.
Right.
So it's 200,000 out and 200,000 back in.
Steve,
Or
Okay,
to-
no, that's fine,
Yeah, we didn't touch the other line yet.
okay. But
If we even do, I don't know.
I reserve the right to repeat my remarks.
Sure,
Any
you
other
can.
discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
All right, and then, just to be clear, I move that we establish the new line, Board of Education expenditures, 1,000 for $200,000 for capital.
Second.
Candace, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous?
All right, make a motion for Land Use Department 148 to reduce $500.
That's simple.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jack.
$500, yeah.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
I make a motion to operating transfers out of 1,101, transfer to capital projects general fund of $20,000. This was slated for this coming year for new cars, but we funded it for 2 new cars recently. So this is, if I understand correctly, not going to have an effect. So just reducing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor? Unanimous?
All right, number 8 is revenue is transferring in to debt service fund 099-799-001, 000, $50,000. $50,000.
That's not a reduction, that's an addition.
Yeah, increase in revenues.
Did you make it? I will second it. Or did somebody else second it?
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Okay, make a motion for other town properties, Department 325, contracted services to reduce it by $4,400.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Steve. Discussion?
May I just ask, you have eliminated where you put on the side words, Josh, that it really has to do with the bachelor school property, but it could be anything, right?
Well, in our budget, we specifically have $4,400 that's been allocated within that line for the maintenance of the property at Bachelor School. So that's related to, making sure that the grounds are kept, making sure that everything stays operational, the building doesn't collapse in on itself.
So it's
If
not
we're
just mowing,
able-
it's not just mowing then. The word here says your ability to mow.
The majority is mowing, honestly, and just grounds maintenance.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, we went out to bid for mowing services, and the contracted number jumped dramatically this year. So you'll see that there is an increase in some of the other town property maintenance lines, and a lot of it is related to the new mowing numbers that we received through a competitive bidding process. Unfortunate, but we did select a low bid as part of that plan, or as part of that procurement. But if we're able to transfer the bachelor school in a timely manner, this will be a moot point.
Further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Well, I'm making some more motions. Don't forget that this year we'll be able to transfer money at the end of the year if we were to need it.
Yeah, okay.
So, employee benefits, Department 918, health insurance reduced by $40,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Wait, which line?
11.
11.
11, okay. We skipped 10, that's
Yep.
right.
Any discussion?
And you're okay with all of that reduction, Josh?
I am.
Through health benefits?
I'm not comfortable with any more. The savings that's found here, we have had a few positions be filled at this point in time, and we know that there won't be family plans, so we had to budget family plans in any instance where we have a vacancy, and because we have so many vacancies, it drove up our costs this year. So as we're looking at new numbers, we know that there's an amount that we can reduce as a result of that. We also can play the probability game of, with the vacancies we have, not every last person is going to come in
Fair
at a
enough.
family rate. So I'm comfortable with this amount as a reduction, but not more.
It's just a large amount of health benefits, health insurance, just,
It is. As I said, we really had to think about what was proposed to get down to 26.5.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
This next one, again, instead of using property tax mill rate increase, let's move this over to the ARPA funding.
on
So,
line 15,
12.
12?
Number 12. I'm going to propose that we remove the Economic Development Administrative Salary, Department 125 of $48,000, and that Josh could bring it back as an ARPA motion to us.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
And we're still qualifying this as a part-time position.
Any other discussion? I think it's a very important position that we keep for our future.
So it can come through ARPA,
So I'm very
so
happy
we can
with
figure out
ARPA
what's
funding
happening with
for
the
it.
assistant planner and the planner and all that too over the next year.
All in favor? Unanimous?
The next one is, I believe, item, I'm on 12, I think, on the second page of the 3-page. Right?
Yep. Yeah, page 2. It's the FICA reduction
Yeah.
for,
So employee benefits 918, FICA reduced by 3,672.
I'll second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
I think I said I would leave, it's 13.
yeah, 13 you're acting.
13 I'm acting on. Recreation 812, reduced general labor by 15,600 with the understanding that there will be enterprise funds and grant funding for it.
Is there a second? I'll go ahead.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Here's another reduction for employee benefits, 918 FICA of $1,194.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, give it to Linda. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
All right, I'm skipping the next number 15, but moving to 15 highways, right, Josh? No.
You had said that you would skip that.
Oh, okay,
But
so that's
16
is 15, well, over on the skinny sheet, there's one 15, and over on this big page, there's a bunch of 15s.
Yeah, and that's because the 15
Is all related?
department, well, they're all related, exactly, and they're all the different places where those benefits are found.
Okay,
I
all
want to stop for just a minute. Can we go back to line 13? I know we voted unanimously on that. Line 13, what you said was 15,600. On the one page, line 15, it says 16,794.
So I want to draw everybody's attention on the larger packet. There are some lines where it's broken out into 2 separate categories. So you just made 2 separate motions. The first on Recreation Department 812 for a reduction of $15,600. The next was still related to number 13.
Got it.
But employee benefits FICA related to that position.
I was just trying to balance the two figures.
Yes, you've
Thank
got it.
you.
And that's the exact same thing with number 15. There are a whole bunch of different items that all add up into that $94,000 for the recreation maintainer.
Yeah, you threw me off with highways, so.
Sorry.
That's right. All right, so I think the next one is 16, emergency management equip.
Did we vote on 15?
We're not voting on it.
We're not.
Leaving it. We're not.
Skipping 14, skipping 15, and we'll also
Ah.
skip 17 based on what Katie had.
Right, but we're doing 16,
Yep,
emergency
16.
management lines. So in this one, emergency management lines, there's 214, maintenance of equipment for $700, and communications equipment for $850.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
All right, going down to 18, capital,
No, 17, you have to do the reduction. I mean, there's 2 lines of 16.
She had listed both.
I just listed
in her
both.
motion.
Okay,
sorry, I should speak clearer. So 17, we're skipping for another conversation. 18, operating transfers out, transfer to capital projects, a reduction of $50,000.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jack. Discussion?
So we're budgeting for something that
Sorry, I'm not sure.
These are engineering plans.
So we have a $2.53 million grant from the federal government for the Public Works facility. In order to proceed with that, we do need to have an amount of town funding that goes forward. And the proposal, the initial proposal that I had provided to you was for $100,000.
Was the total cost gonna be like 4 million?
Yeah, total cost will be 4.6. The federal grant can only cover by law up to 55%, so that's the 2.53. And so to kick off the total project, the intent was to have $100,000 go forward. With this $50,000 reduction, it would only be $50,000 that goes into engineering for this coming year. There's a 5-year performance period once we sign an agreement with the
To get additional funding.
USDA to get that funding from the federal government, yes. But we do have to show that we have skin in the game through this process.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
All in favor? Unanimous?
All right, so in line 19, this is to offset, again, using grant money that we are receiving to offset some of the mill rate increase through this proposed position that would be new in the budget by taking revenues of $5,000 from the town's opioid settlement money to support the wages of social service director.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Lynn. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous?
Then I believe, you bring us 21 later on for that adjustment. So he has adjustment 1, 2.1 and stuff. You want us to do those, right, Josh, here?
I would appreciate it,
Okay, so
and I
adjustment,
could explain as we go along.
adjustment 1 is transfers out 1,000, department,
Yeah, I think we have to follow through. If we took the 5,000 in revenue, and what about line 20, revenue, new line? Or is
We're
that just
just-
a repeat, Josh?
well, line 20 is, when we put revenues, we're putting revenues in the top half of the budget.
Yeah.
So it reduces the mill rate impact by having the revenue. It does not adjust the social services salary or anything like that. It just only adds money up top, which reduces the property
Well,
tax.
I'm just,
Did you act on number 20 fire?
No, I skipped.
No, we didn't
I
act on
skipped
20.
fire, because I
But-
thought we would talk about it later.
Okay.
In
We-
my
did-
initial run-through, I left certain things out.
well, I thought we ended up saying that that line under fire was gonna be 21.
21
is
is
21.
Greenwood's counseling referrals. He's gonna bring
Yeah.
it back to us on Monday with an adjustment.
So you're skipping 20 and 21
Right.
right now, right? Okay. And now you're on adjustments.
Okay, adjustment 1, operating transfers out 1,001. Transfer to capital projects, general fund, $5,000.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion?
Just so everybody's aware, with the new chief coming in, he had a quick, 8 days to evaluate what was going on down in the department, and in going through the budget, he realized that there's no allocation right now for the state mandated police department accreditation process, so this $5,000 will go to support that, which is required by law.
So even though we're not, are we accredited or not?
We are not currently accredited. We
Well, still
must,
have to give the state $5,000.
we must receive accreditation by the end of this coming calendar year, so that money will be spent between July 1 and December 31st to get accredited.
Thank you.
All in favor? Unanimous?
All right, these next two are the adjustments for movement in personnel. So adjustment 2.1, land use, Department 148, reduction of $15,133.
Second?
Thank you, Jack. Discussion? All in favor?
Next is adjustment 2.2, tax collector, Department 117, to add $15,133.
Second?
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 3, employee benefits, Department 918, compensated absences, increased by $22,410.
Second? Thank you, Steve. Discussion?
The purpose of this, we were informed by another town employee who has a significant amount of money that would be required to be paid out by contract, through that person's contract if they were to retire this coming fiscal year, and we were notified that they intend to retire in this coming fiscal year. That
After
notification
July
was
1st.
made yesterday,
After
after
July
July 1st. That's right. So we are requesting an increase in that line.
Any other discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 4.1, debt administration, we're saving money on the bonding and the bonding process, so principal infrastructure bond, an increase to debt administration, Department 913 of $119,153.
Second.
Discussion?
To speak to this very briefly, at the last motion in the 4 category will be in revenues, which will offset the increases that you're voting to approve right now. Though, and I know that I have spoken about this with members of the Board of Selectmen before and even shared a little bit on social media about it. Bonding is, the way that we calculate true interest cost is a little complicated. It's not just about the interest rate that the individuals who hold the bond will receive from the town. As you can see here, that we will actually be sending more money out the door as part of our bond payments in the first couple of years of this bond. However, we received almost $800,000 as a bond premium in additional costs. So instead of the individuals who purchased the bonds from us giving us the $11.5 million, they actually gave us almost $12.5 million, 12.3. So we now have an excess amount of money that will sit in a bank account that can be spent down as a mill rate stabilization fund, so to speak, in order to decrease these or mitigate the increases that you're seeing here. So there will be an increase in revenues from this extra account, this extra bond premium, in order to account for the increased costs in the initial years of the debt payments.
All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 4.2, debt administration 913, the principal on Hinsdale School, adjust $66,017.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 4.3, debt administration, Department 913, interest infrastructure bond, $44,482.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 4.4, debt administration, Department 913, interest Hinsdale School, $24,646.
I'll second.
Thanks, Jonathan. Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 4.5, revenues, new line, mill rate stabilization fund bond premium, $254,298.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
Adjustment 5, ambulance, Department 215, paramedic costs, $9,824.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Jonathan. Discussion?
A little discussion on,
Yeah.
I apologize.
Go ahead. No, you're probably going to answer the question I'm going to ask.
So the issue that we've been running into with the paramedic, we're still negotiating this contract with Hartford Healthcare. There are 7 towns that are involved with this consortium, with Winchester just being one of them. In order to land this contract without having members leave and split, we've had a lot of conversations about how to best divvy up the costs related to the $305,000 contract that we're signing on to, or that we intend to sign on to with Hartford Healthcare to provide this service. Initially, there was a conversation about population being the metric, so we divided the costs equally based on each town's population. That went out the door when everybody realized that Winstead would save $80,000 a year, and all the other towns would be eating that cost, as compared to the prior contract's costs. So as much as I advocated for that, I was one vote among 7, and it wasn't going to fly. Beyond that, the next set of numbers that we had were related to the 2022 paramedic call volume, where Winstead uses the paramedic dramatically more than some of the towns that are on the far reaches of this consortium area. because the paramedic can't necessarily get to every call that's way out in Sandusfield as much as they can, being housed in Winsted, get to a call that's just down the street from them. So the 2022 call volume would have saved us about $9,824. Since then, Trinity Healthcare has provided us with the numbers associated with not just 2022, but 2021 through 2016 for call volume. And when you look at those numbers on an average annual basis, Winsted has a higher call volume, has had a higher call volume in past years than it had this year. So as we've gone through all of these numbers, the consensus, as much as I thought it was going to be rallying around the 2022 call volumes, the consensus seems to be, with the new data, to average the call volumes over the course of 2022 to 2016 and use those averaged call volumes to come up with the new prices for each town, which puts us, unfortunately, back up into the $180,000 range. So it's pretty much a wash year over year. I did my best, but unfortunately, it was a numbers game where there were only 3 of us who were voting in favor of using 2022 numbers who would have seen savings, and the other 4 towns saw savings by going with this new metric.
Is this a one-year contract?
This is a 3-year contract. It will be
3-year?
locked in at a level rate, and the intention would be for this to not have to change in fiscal years 24, 5, and 6. After that point, we would have to either renegotiate an extension with Hartford Healthcare, which we might be able to even negotiate in this contract with a maximum percent increase possible, or we would have to go back out and bid for the services.
So just to verify what you've said, the cost of this ambulance service on the budget, $180,000?
Yes, that would be the total cost with the negotiations going the way that they seem to be.
And that $180,410 is locked in for 3 years?
Correct. And it's about even to what we paid last year. I think it's a couple $100 less. I can verify that for you. And Hartford Healthcare's costs will remain level over the course of the term of the contract. So Hartford Healthcare is charging the consortium $305,000. $180,000 is our share of that based on call volume averaged over a, however many years that is, 7-year period.
I haven't seen the contract, but why I'm asking that is there's no provision for renegotiating from them for that 3 years. That is a lock-in figure, so we can look at the budget for the next 3 years, and that figure will not change at all.
Correct. By law, they have submitted their RFP responses. We've gone through this conversation with them already. They understand the requirements of the program. They'll be mirroring the program that was provided by Trinity Healthcare in the same services. There'll be 24-hour paramedic coverage. They'll be housing their paramedic car out of the Hartford Healthcare building instead of out of the Winsted Health Center or our fire station. But at the end of the day, yes, they will be locked in at $305,000 for a 3-year period.
What happens with insurance premiums that are paid from the caller, like Medicare, Medicaid? I think they're charged.
They may be.
charged. Where does that money go? Who does that go to?
That goes to the ambulance service.
To the ambulance?
Not-
So it doesn't
not
go,
related
does
to
it go
this.
to it doesn't go to this
Paramedic
one?
cost is different from the ambulance service.
Okay. So we pay Hartford Healthcare, who pays the paramedics to be in our area and active. But with the health insurance and premiums that may be applied to any individual's personal costs, that would be going to the Winsted area ambulance service, which would also be responding to a call, but they're a transport service, whereas the paramedic is going to be on scene and providing medical services and waiting for the ambulance to come and transport them to a
Okay,
hospital.
thank you. It's a lot of money.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous?
And with this, I would request that Josh provide us a copy of the budget for Monday night that is correct based on the motions we made not only today, but the last time we met and made budget adjustments, so that we get a copy of the budget that looks, is the official budget, and then bring back any adjustment areas that we've talked about for us to consider again on Monday night, if necessary. So when he does the budget, he'll come back with what the current mill rate will look like. He'll come back with the transit company Some of the things that are on here, we could relook at if we want to, or we'll just see where we are.
And your proposal is keeping these open items discussion on Monday night?
Well, I'd like to see what the whole budget looks like first. I'd like to see an intact budget. You know, we've had versions of budgets since we got the first one on March 15th. So let's see the latest version of the budget where it says town managers proposed, selectmen proposed, with all of these plus the other nights embedded in it, corrected, all calculations correct, because we've had things that were not calculated correctly. So if we get that budget correct, then we'll be good to go on Monday night. I'd just like to propose that for Monday night.
Is it possible, Josh, that over the time period, there may be something else that we haven't come up with that you might want to suggest?
It's possible. I
And I'm
doubt it's
sorry,
likely.
I have to go, I have an appointment, I have to.
I know,
Okay.
I know. Josh does
I'm
too.
already late.
Josh, you have to leave too, right? 3:30?
I have more time. No worries about me. But I doubt that I am going to have enough time over the weekend to come up with too many more additions, corrections, changes, et cetera. It's going to take enough effort just to put everything in place that was voted on here today, but we'll make it happen.
And these open items, we can not only talk about on Monday night, but we have the opportunity to continue the discussion and the finalization of the budget Tuesday night.
That's correct.
That's still on the agenda. We still have it posted as a Tuesday night, 7 o'clock meeting on the Board of, on the total budget.
Tuesday, 5 p.m. meeting.
5 p.m.
Is what's projected here in this room. And there is a hard cutoff, just so everybody's aware. There's another meeting that will be in here at 7 p.m. I believe it's actually the Board of Education that will be in here. So maybe they just want to sit and wait and watch what's going on here. But that will be a maximum of a 2-hour meeting. The other thing I would ask is that board members please bring any questions that they have for Anne Marie on the financial side to the next meeting. She is not necessarily able to make it to the Tuesday night meeting. So any questions that you have for her, please, if you can, prepare them for Monday night.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to go back to your earlier discussion about the phase-in of the revaluation and just take a look at that as part of the discussion. I know the question of the budget is one item on the agenda, but revaluation has got to be a second issue. It can't be, I mean, yes, they're tied, but they are still separate votes. If we discuss the revaluation, perhaps we should discuss that before we end up finalizing the budget, as you've already suggested. So that's probably an item first on the agenda. And Josh, again, you know where I stand on this. I'm not in favor of the phasing in, but it seems like there is some discussion that needs to be had about phasing it in, and how does that affect the budget and the mill rate?
It affects the mill rate,
It affects the mill rate.
not
Yeah,
necessarily.
I understand.
Budget's a budget.
Right.
Phasing in affects the revaluation that we get taxed on at phase level.
But when we approve a budget, when we make the final decision before the deadline of April or whatever it is, we also have to set,
We have to set the mill rate after that. That's where we make the decision,
yeah,
if we phase it in or we don't.
right. So I'd like to have that as part of an agenda item, separate to just make sure we're progressing along the right way on that.
We can add that Monday, right? Or do we need to put it on Tuesdays?
No, but the Monday night agenda can support that conversation, no problem. At the beginning of the meeting,
You wanna just add it?
the agenda's already been posted, but yeah, just add it at the beginning of the meeting. I will say with just some very basic number crunching, if there was a one-year phase-in, meaning that you'd go from, with fiscal year '23, the year that we're currently in being the old rate, if you went 50% to the new rate and then 100% in fiscal year 2025, so 50% in the coming year, you would have a mill rate of, with this budget that I proposed, that you were trying to get to 26.5 on, it would instead change that to a 30.30 mill rate. That's very loose. That's my number, not Anne Marie's number. So take that with a grain of salt, but that's an approximation of where we'd be.
And how do we go about notifying, if we were to do a phase-in, and again, I'm not in favor of that, so my vote will not be in favor of that. But if we were to do that, just so we open discussion about this, how do taxpayers know that they're gonna see a mill rate increase but the phase-in of their assessed value that they've already received in the mail and saying, this is what your assessed value is of your property. How is that
They
gonna
would
be
see a mill rate
transmitted?
increase.
And how does that get out to individual taxpayers?
The only thing I can imagine is that we would need to send out a new letter, a new individualized letter to every taxpayer to inform them that in fiscal year 2024, this is their assessed value, and in fiscal year 2025, the full amount that they were expecting will be their new assessed value, and that it's phased in with an explanatory text underneath. I don't think that there's any other way we can reasonably expect residents to have a full understanding of what's happening with a phase-in without that type of mailing coming to them personally. We also need to make sure it's on social media, we need to make sure it's posted, but I think given that we already sent a mailer out to everybody with their new assessed value, it only makes sense to make sure that they have any new changes to that assessed value in hand as a mailer.
So additional administrative responsibility here,
And cost.
and cost.
Town meeting, because the mill rate's determined after the town meeting.
Right. That's true.
So
That's true.
it's not determined at the town meeting when they vote the budget.
Right.
It's afterwards when we establish the mill rate. So in addition to that, there can be another discussion about that, an explanation, besides obviously having to communicate before that to the
Yeah,
residents.
I understand we don't set the mill rate, the tax rate until after, but I think I want to make sure everybody knows what it
Oh,
could
no,
be.
We have to do it before as well,
Yeah.
and say this is something that the board of selectmen are considering.
Yeah.
So who benefits from the phase-in? Who benefits from that? I'm listening. I don't think I'm gonna benefit from it.
From my perspective, anybody who,
Who appeal.
mathematically, anybody who saw a major increase in their assessed value from this current year into next year with the new reevaluated numbers is going to benefit from a phase-in. They'll have a one-time, not reduction in how much they're paying, but a one-time relief, or I guess 2 times if you had it phased in over a few years, relief from the full new assessed value that they hypothetically should be paying on.
The individuals that came here, who've been living on
Yeah.
Island Lake for their entire life,
Right.
they would benefit.
There were some properties at Highland Lake that increased over 70%. So
So,
those would be properties that would,
so
But
just those areas, but
got reductions from the BAA.
some of them, not everybody,
You get some kind of reduction.
some. A very small percentage filed appeals, don't forget.
On the other side of that, the properties where you saw reductions in value, or at least a reduction in the amount that would need to be paid based on the projected mill rate, would see smaller reductions. So they're not going to see $1,000 savings next year, they're only going to see $500 savings next year if you do a one-year phase-in. I hope that makes sense. But everybody basically, it moderates the change. So if you had an increase, that will be halved. If you had a decrease, that will be halved. And everybody will be a little bit closer to the central, the central value of their property.
Josh, wasn't there a number of households that were communicated that would be impacted by the reval and others that would not or see a decrease? Was that 1,000?
Yeah, it's roughly 1,000 that saw either a zero impact or some kind of decrease in how much they would pay in taxes.
Out of how many?
Now, that was based on a 27.06 mill rate, so once you reduce that a little further, you might have more that fall into that range. That's out of about 5,000 homes that we are,
think it's
lots that we have in town.
5,500 maybe.
5,500 lots in total.
So 1,000 or less would not be impacted or see a decrease?
Yes, probably closer to at least 1,500 with the decreased mill rate that, the $870,000 reduction we're aiming for right now, but yes, in that ballpark.
So 4,000.
Yeah, well, remember, GL got reduced to $11 million.
Pardon?
The grand list got reduced to $11 million.
For some properties.
$11 million in total. That's a lot of dollars off the grand list that the assessors had put in there, the revaluation.
Some got discounts on Main Street that I don't agree with. So,
That's still a pretty sizable reduction.
Hey, can we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Hey, John, all in favor? Oh, 6-0? I'm up. I was up.
Yes, would you like me to just email them to you? Or do you want to take? Do you want to go over them right now? I need these copies. I'm happy to go over them with you, and then can I email you copies for you to keep? Okay. But I'll need those back before you go.